economic conditions and so forth. And sometimes, probably a lot of times, those are the kind of things that show up in people accessing guns and committing the kind of violence that they commit in urban America and in other places. And Newark, of course, is no stranger to that. And we wanted to talk to the mayor about gun violence in the city. Just 5 incidents this past weekend as well. And we also want to talk to the mayor about this new e-approval online permitting process for special events and for filmmaking in the city of Newark. We had some guests on, Stephen Gorlick with the New Jersey Film Society, and others just last month or the month before, talking about how these tax incentives are leading to tax breaks are leading to more filming taking place in New Jersey and certainly in Newark. And he cited an example for us of how he stepped out of his office one day and he looked to the left and saw a film crew, and he looked to the right and saw a film crew, and they were working on two completely different projects. So a lot of films and production and TV production and commercials, of course, being filmed in the city of Newark. There was one even filmed that aired during the Super Bowl, the most recent Super Bowl. And so we want to talk to the mayor about streamlining this permit process so that these kind of projects can take place in the city, and that you can, if you streamline that, the thinking is that you could invite more people to come and more crews and production companies and so forth to film in the city of Newark. And Newark certainly, of course, is that kind of place, especially with this commitment to build this 300,000 square foot Lionsgate studio over in the South Ward that was announced earlier in the spring. And we want to talk to the mayor about the city's policy on marijuana use. Marijuana use now, recreational use and medicinal purposes too, are certainly legal in the state of New Jersey and certainly in places like Newark, New Jersey's largest city. And we wanted to talk to the mayor, this conversation to be had about what Newark's policy is. The state attorney general, for instance, has said it's okay for police officers to go ahead and to use marijuana recreationally without fear of prosecution or anything like that. The mayor of Jersey City, for instance, is saying, wait a minute here. Law enforcers took a federal oath when they became law enforcers that says that they will not smoke these drugs or use drugs that are illegal. And marijuana is still one of those substances, even though it's widely used, and it's more and more places are legalizing it. But marijuana is still one of those places on the federal schedule that says it's an illegal substance. And so that's what the mayor of Jersey City is relying on. The state attorney general, the most powerful law enforcement official in the entire state, is saying no, it's okay for these officers to go ahead and use marijuana, of course, on their off time. But the mayor of Jersey City again is saying no. So we want to find out from the mayor of Newark what Newark's policy is when it comes to marijuana use and first responders, police officers, firefighters, EMS. And I have a question too for the mayor, simply about what do you do about the hiring process for non-first responders? If places like Newark and other employers are requiring people to pass drug tests and so forth, what's the new protocol? What's the new policy for those if you find THC in someone's system? What does Newark do? What does New Jersey do? And that's one of the things to explore with the mayor of Newark to find out what he has said and what he has instituted again in Newark. So that should be an interesting conversation as well once we get the mayor on, and I hope that we get him on shortly. And so, as I said, in the second half of the show, we'll be talking to Dupree Do It All Kelly about his election to city council representing the West Ward of Newark, and that should be an interesting conversation. He had a conversation more than 25 years ago with the late Tupac Shakur, and talking about what people of the hip hop culture and others what they should be thinking about as they gain stature, as they gain wealth, as they gain recognition and so forth, what they should do, what their obligation is to the places they have come from, where they were born, where they were raised, and what they should do. Not just this blanket statement of giving back, of showing up on Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving, to give out turkeys and holiday dinners and things like that, but making a commitment to the places you have come from to affect change, to make it a better place, to make it better than when you were growing up, better than when you left it, and better as you come back. And looking at what tools are available, what resources are available, what your influence can mean for a place like that, and how you can help improve where you're from. Not just the ward for someone like a Dupree Kelly. We'll talk about the West Ward, but his interest goes beyond the West Ward. His interest is making Newark in general a better place. And so that's something we want to talk to him about. I'm really interested in talking to him about this conversation he had with Tupac Shakur more than 25 years ago. I met Tupac in the summer of 94, I think it was, when we were living over in New York, and he showed up at a building. He's waiting for somebody to come out, and he was just sitting there near the water fountain and struck up a conversation with them. And he handed our son a dollar bill, and I don't think our son exactly at the time he was young, didn't exactly know who Tupac Shakur was, and so he didn't treasure the dollar that Tupac gave him and went right around the corner and spent the dollar. So that was interesting, and we joke about it all the time now. But Tupac was like that, and it was about giving and giving back and so forth, and not just giving kids money or anything, but talking to kids. And he struck up a conversation with our son as well. And so we want to talk to Dupree Kelly about that conversation that he had with Tupac Shakur and the commitment that folks of Dupree Kelly's statute, what they should do, and what Tupac would say was their obligation to do to help where they came from. So we're going to have that kind of conversation now, and we're going to find out what we can in terms of this conversation he had with Tupac and what he hopes to achieve as a new council member for the city of Newark. I'm going to turn to my folks here and find out. I know right now I got a note here from our producers saying that we're trying to get the mayor on the phone and trying to find out why we don't have him on the phone right now, and then we'll go from there. But is there a way we can take a break or something right now so that we can recalibrate here and not just hear me talking for another 15 minutes?
WBGO is public radio. But what does that mean? It means that instead of playing you music as an excuse to make money, WBGO raises money to play you great music. That means no commercials. That means independence. That also means we need you to support your public radio station with a financial contribution. You see, that's the only way to keep this over 40-year strong voice of music and news on the air and online. Because the public in public radio, that's you. Know you've done your part for your public radio station. Click donate at WBGO.org.
Welcome back to Newark Today. Waiting for the mayor to come on and see if we can connect here. He's supposed to be on the first half hour here. It must be some scheduling mistake there. But one of the things we wanted to talk to Mayor Baraka about, and I mentioned this earlier, was the e-approval online permitting process. And I can tell you a little bit more about that now. It's an online permitting platform that will be used to process applications for special events, for block parties, for films, First Amendment gatherings, and so forth. The city wants to make sure that folks have quick access to those kinds of things, and especially to the film industry and to and to people in Newark who want to celebrate this city and celebrate and have a good time and enjoy where they live. And I want to read you a quote here that the city issued last week about this. Is using this platform will enable us to rapidly deploy support for complex permit types and improve efficiency. This is what the mayor said last week. As a forward thinking city, we have embraced the new trend to secure online software that meets the needs of our departments while containing cost and allowing the flexibility to add further permitting processes. This will allow us to offer residents excellent customer service and continue to make Newark a technology friendly city. And so that's always a good thing here when you're trying to attract business and trying to make things accessible to the people of the city of Newark. I believe Mr. Dupree Do All Kelly is on with us now. Can you hear me?
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Hill?
My name is Michael, sir. Okay.
And mine is Dupré, sir.
Dupree, pardon me, sir. Dupree. Thank you. How are you?
Man, I'm good. I'm just getting off a call with all of the district leaders in the West Ward. This is my first district leader call as councilman with all of the districts, the 37 districts of the West Ward.
Right.
And we got a lot of work to do, but it feels amazing, man.
I
So
know. I
I'm good.
know you're excited. I talked to you. You'll remember
Yes,
this.
yes,
I talked to
yes, I
you
do.
in December at the Newark Museum of Art
That's
working
right.
on your project, and you said that you were running for city council, and I wanted to talk to you then about what the mission was going to be when you got elected, because I didn't think there was any question you were going to get elected. I want you to tell us before we jump into that. I want you to tell us who is Dupré Kelly.
Dupré Kelly is a son of Newark. Dupré Kelly is an indigenous Westwater. And why I say that is because I was born on 16th Street between 14th Avenue and South Orange Avenue to a single mom in University Hospital when it was called Martland, and I was raised on 19th Street when the sand pit was still there in between 13th Avenue and 12th Avenue. Uh, I went to 13th Avenue Elementary School, graduated from there, and I used to run through the hallways of West Side High School with all of my friends that lived in my neighborhood. And Mr. Potts soon learned that I did not go to West Side, that I went to Newark Tech. And that's why my mother didn't allow me to go to West Side, because she wanted me to focus. She wanted me not to be so distracted by my friends. And I think it was a great choice. Going to Essex County Vocational and Technical School really, really meant a lot for me and my upcoming. And then from there, I went to Shaw University, one of the, I want to say the greatest HBCU,
Uh-oh.
in HBCU history, but the mayor might disagree with me.
I'm sure he will.
But one thing that the mayor and I can agree on is that I pledged the greatest fraternity ever in life, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, while I was there. But I have to say this part about going to Shaw too. I went to Shaw University by a program by Ralph T. Grant Sr., Dr. Reverend Ralph T. Grant Sr., who is, I believe, the vice president of Pillar College now. He had a program where he sent inner city Newark youth to college. And I went to school in his program. And that's what I love about that. What I love about that is that here it is. You have young male children in Newark, New Jersey, who grow up in our city sometimes without a male figure. So we're left to figure it out on our own, or we have the women in our family who have to lift that for us, take on that responsibility. And our women are so strong, because I don't believe that a woman can teach a young male child how to become a male. I do understand that she teaches him what a strong woman is, what a woman is, and vice versa. I don't think that a grown adult man can teach a young little girl how to become a woman. So, we are the young men in our city and in inner cities like Newark, New Jersey. We're trying to find those mentors, and I found them. I found one in an 8th grade teacher in 13th Avenue School. I found another one by the name of Rufus Johnson, who went on to be our commissioner and freeholder of great county of Essex. And another guy by the name of Ronald L. Rice, who's a police officer and then becomes our councilman and then becomes our great senator. So that's the stock that I come from. Now, I am also the guy in the neighborhood that the district leaders on my block at that time in the 80s was a lady by the name of Miss Blocker and Miss White. Those are the elders who prayed for people like me. And when I say people like me is because when you're a young male child, black male child growing up in cities like Newark, New Jersey, and raised by a single parent, a mother, it's hard to maneuver. It's difficult to maneuver through cities like Newark, New Jersey. And we did it. We did it through prayer. We did it 1 foot, 1 out, and prayer happened. And through that prayer, I was able to make it out, so to speak. I was able to capture a dream of mine by becoming a platinum selling recording artist in the entertainment business who went on to become an actor and do those things. But the reason why that is important is because I also went to school, and I am a product of those prayers of making it out. We prayed for people like me, the youth like me, and I made it out. But it wasn't, what I learned was, it's not about making it out. It was about coming back. It was about staying here and replanting in the same soil that you grew from. And that's what it's about to me. So I felt like that I've done that. Even when I sold millions of records, I took that money and started a nonprofit organization, and I gave back to the community, and I haven't stopped giving back. I'm that same guy who was on the steps of City Hall with a young activist named Raz J. Baraka, who was not an elected official at all. And we caused gang truces, and we brought some celebrity figures to the community to fight against drugs and to fight against being abused in our community, and asking for demands that we demand the chief of police to be this, and we demand the director of the police to do this. Now we are that. Now those demands have been met. Now we are the police chief. Now we are the police director. Now we are the public safety directors. So now what are we going to do with? Now we are the mayor. Now we are the councilman. Now it's our responsibility to live up to what was asked of us as youth. Mayor Baraka Sr. told me to pit my bucket where I lay. And I didn't know what he meant at that time. Yeah. And what he said to me was that we have to start keeping our superheroes close. It's good that they respect us and love us from afar, but when you're direct one-on-one with them, it is so much better. And what he explained to me, this quick example that he explained to me, was that, say, you go away and acquire all of your knowledge, and you become a brain surgeon, one of the greatest brain surgeons in the world, and you take that expertise to California and Cedars-Sinai Hospital. He said you will have just changed the economics of the hospital, the economics of hotels and the surrounding restaurants, and he said, now imagine if you bring that to University Hospital. Imagine if you bring your superpowers back home to Newark, New Jersey. Then you have done the same thing, and that's what I had planned to do. So having people like Ron Rice and Ralph Grant and Rufus Johnson and a brother by the name of Hafiz Fareed, and, all of these peoples, and Nicholas Ibokwe, an 8th grade teacher who just passed away on July 15th. So God bless to his family, was a 13th Avenue elementary school teacher who cared. That's what we have to start getting back to. When you love your city, you can change it. So we have to get back to caring about where we're from and who we are with. That's Dupré Kelly.
Yes. Thank you, sir. When you talk about Ralph Grant Sr. and what it meant to have that kind of person with that kind of stature, ensure that you have an opportunity to go to an institute of higher learning. What did that tell you about your mission? How does that inform your mission about what you have to do in Newark, not just and especially now as someone who is, it's one thing to be a philanthropist. It's one thing to be a platinum selling hip hop artist. It's one thing to be influential like that. But now you're in an elected position in the city of Newark. You're one of several members of the lawmaking body in Newark. And so how does that experience with Ralph Grant Sr., making sure that you had an opportunity to go to Shaw University, how does that inform your mission and what you must do and what you want to do in the city of Newark?
When you're young, you don't see it right away, right? And one thing I can say about Ralph Grant, he's the first person that I knocked on doors with to give out his flyers for election. So he's the first one initially to introduce me to what local politics was through a brother named of Hafiz Fareed. He's one of the ones, him and Hafiz are one of the ones that showed me what community was locally. So he's the one who sent me to school. I didn't realize how important all of these little tidbits would become in my life. See, when you see something and it's positive, or whatever you see with the physical eye, when you're impressionable, when you're a youth, a young person that's impressionable, you see something, like they say, the saying goes, you see it, you can be it. Subconsciously, I'll tell you this, without a male figure in my life, because when I was 16, just standing on the corner, coming out of a corner store on 13th Avenue and 19th Street, my biological father didn't recognize me and tried to buy marijuana from me, at 16, and didn't recognize I was his son. So when you have a person like Ralph Grant, who recognizes everything about you, who recognizes that, and see the inspiration in you and the potential in you, it means a lot. So much so that I did not realize just by watching Ralph Grant that I would become who I am in this position that I am in now, because Ralph Grant sent me to Shaw University. So he was the figure in my life at that particular time. So at that time, I went to the same school he went to. There's no fraternity people in my family at all. I became an alpha like him. He didn't tell me to, but I'm watching him. Shaw University, become an alpha. I did not leave Newark. I went around and acquired knowledge, but I came right back home. I started a nonprofit organization because he was involved in civic organizations. I started to connect and engage with the community because he was involved and connected with the community. So here it is, when you see a role model, they don't always tell you that they are role models. But if you look and watch and focus, you will start to act like them, be like them. And unfortunately, this happens in a negative sense too. If you're around negative things constantly, all the time, you will become of it. My grandmother used to say, learn how to be amongst mammon, but come from amongst ye. Like don't turn into them if you're around them, unless it's something positive. And I felt like even without him physically telling me to do something, I watched his characteristics, I watched his actions, and I became it. I became that. Now I am councilman like Ralph T. Grant, who sent me to school. And the first thing that I did, even before I got into office, I contacted the dean of Shaw University and Ralph T. Grant and said that I want to continue the same program that sent me to school. I want to carry on his program because nobody has took it on since he was out of office. So I will be restarting that program that will send our youth and our city to colleges. I've already started because I promised myself that I would give $1 million of scholarships away. I didn't know how I was going to do it.
Wow.
But I got with a company out of Washington, D.C. called EduCapital. And we are giving, and Mac Boring Company, which is the diesel engineering company.
Right.
I got with them and I am giving $1 million away through my civic association, my nonprofit organization, which is called 211 Community Impact, in trade schools, in online programming. We're giving $1 million away. I went to Essex County Vocational School. I believe that trade is very, very important. So I'm giving away $1 million worth of scholarships to 211 Community Impact, and I'm sending people to college.
Dupré, I have to ask you this because, and I don't mean to digress here, but you said you were 16 and your father came to a street corner and tried to buy marijuana from you, but didn't
Yeah.
recognize you. Why didn't he recognize you?
Well, he had only, and I'll go back to this too. I don't mean to digress as well, but it goes back to, you know, I've always wanted my dad in my life, right? I think all young men do, right? They always want that male figure in their life. But sometimes, God's plan is a different plan. Now, if I would have been in my father's life, I can remember being 5 years old and him getting stopped by the police for whatever reason, and I'm locked up with him. And what I mean by I'm locked up with him, when they take him to jail, I'm crying profusely. And the only way to stop crying is they put me in the cell with him so I can stop crying. So I'm locked up physically with my dad at 5 years old. At 8 years old, I remember my last name is Kelly, but my real last name was Williams. And the reason why I changed it to Kelly, because my stepfather married my mother when I was 8 years old and adopted me and changed my last name to Kelly. So that's why my last name is Kelly. So that's his namesake, that is Councilman, and I'm happy for that. My stepfather he's in stage 4 cancer right now with esophagus cancer, and I'm glad he got to see that. But my father, so at 8 years old, he was in a shootout with me and my brother in the back seat in the car in Newark, New Jersey at 8 years old. And at 16, he did not recognize who I was and try to buy marijuana from me on the block that I lived on, 13th Avenue and 19th Street. So this is traumatic for a young male child who wants his dad in his life. But as I've gotten older, I don't feel any type of way, because I know that if I would have been around him, if I would have learned to become the man that he was, then I will not be sitting right here on WBGO in Newark, New Jersey, telling you this story this way, because I would have learned how to be a man from a man who was living life in a negative way. But because I didn't learn from him, because I've learned from Ralph T. Grant Sr., because I've learned from Ronald L. Rice, because I learned from Hafiz Fareed, because I learned from all of the men that was in my life, like Nicholas E. Boakwe at 13th Avenue, those are the parts, and my stepdad, John Robert Kelly, those are the men who has made up me. They have made up me who I've become today. They have made up Councilman Kelly. That's why I'm Councilman Kelly today, because of those men. But if I would have followed my biological father, who tried to buy weed from his son, that did not recognize he was his son, then who knows what path that I will be down.
What was your conversation with Tupac Shakur? It was more than 25 years ago, and Tupac was Tupac was one who offered advice to people. I know that. I talked to him personally one time in New York, and cover some of the things taking place in his life as well as a journalist. But what was your conversation with him, and what influence did it have on you?
Oh man, Tupac, I miss my brother Tupac. Tupac was a great friend of mine. We used to tour a lot. One day on tour, we got into an altercation about being late. We shared a van with him back on tour, and one of our members were late getting on the van, and Tupac was very expressive. He talked about being late at 21, about being on time, and he just went off. But I felt like, he really goes in when he goes in. So I felt like he was disrespecting us, and the Newark came out of me. I wanted to push back, and I pushed back just not to be embarrassed. So just to fast forward, he came to my motel room, because we weren't staying in hotels yet. We were staying in the outdoor motels in Orlando, Florida. He came to my motel room, and he had which I look at as peace offerings now. He had a 40-ounce of beer under one hand. He had a Newport cigarette behind one ear, and he had a T-shirt in the other hand. And when he came in, I just looked at him, and he looked at me, and he said, "You're not gonna let me in?" And when he came in, he handed me these items, except the cigarette. He handed me these items, and he said, he looked at me. We sat on 2 different beds, looked at each other, and he said, "You know you were wrong, right?" And I didn't answer him. And he said, but that's why I like you. He said, because you took up for your city, you took up for your people. And when he said that, he just went into something that I haven't heard 21-year-olds talk like to this day. He started to talk about how we cannot move from where we're from. The soil that we grew out of, he said, has gotten you right here, has put you on stage in front of millions of people. Every night you go out in front of thousands of people. That adds up to record sales. And we need to turn those million record sale buyers into voters. He said, once we turn those into voters, then we probably have to do something that we don't really want to do. And that's run for an elected office. We have to create legislation. And this is exactly how he was talking at 21. And I'm like, voters, politics, I'm like, man, we rappers. What are you talking about legislation? And he was like, no. And just as passionate as he rapped, he was like, no, if we don't sit at the table to be involved with the process of making laws, then they're going to never be made with us or for us. They're going to be made about us, And I was like, wow. And he said, so you got to sell millions of records, dude, because I need you and Redman. And he started calling out the people who were popular back then. He said, in Newark, New Jersey, and I need Shy, I need in Chicago, I need Common, and I'll go back to Oakland, and Tret should do it in East Orange. He started naming out all the popular rappers, and he said, because once we unite with all our fan base, he said, they won't be able to stop us. Our party would be the hip hop party. And he was serious. He said, we need to start nonprofit organizations and create youth programs and youth initiatives. So everything that Tupac Shakur told me in that hotel room in Orlando, probably in 1992, I have done. I started 211 Community Impact in Newark, New Jersey. I didn't move out of my city. I mean, I lived in Paris for work for a year. I lived in California for work for a year. I lived in New York working for a year, but I never left my city. That's what he asked of me. The only thing that I didn't do until I did it on July 14th was win an elected official seat. And now we have. Now we are here. Everything that Ras Baraka asked for, demands back in the 90s. We have done it. I know that there's people that are not going to always agree with us, but you prayed for people like Ras J. Baraka. You prayed for people like Dupré Kelly. But when it doesn't come in the package that you expected to come in, do not push it away, because these are your prayers. And I promise you, I don't make promises, but I promise that I'm going to give the West Ward, I'm going to give Newark all that I have, 1,000%, like I have been doing. And that's why I'm glad that I've always kept receipts on the things that I have done, because people will forget. People will forget. You can do something for someone one day and they will forget. So I'm just thankful that I have the ability now to be able to govern where I grew.
And Dupree, we have with you now the Honorable Mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, man. Sorry for the mix-up, brother.
That's all right. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you quickly here about the Code Red situation in Newark. The city has issued a Code Red alert. Is it going to go all the way through Sunday now, or just till Saturday?
No, I'll probably go on till Sunday. I mean, we have an obligation, the state health department, Newark Health Department, whenever this happens, we have to be prepared. There are seniors in our community who are going to need this shelter, cooling shelters. The young people, we're going to keep the pools open, and they also can go there. So this has just been an incredible heat wave. We're just telling everybody to do what they can, stay hydrated, and stay cool.
Good. Mr. Mayor, I also wanted to talk to you about the e-approval process that the city just launched last week, where you're making the permit process smoother. And Dupree, if you can, stick around for us too. Mr. Mayor, I want to talk to you about that. What is that all about?
Yeah, well, just efficiency, and we're doing that. We're trying to be more user-friendly at the city side, and we're doing that with almost everything. We are, we've already done it with small businesses to be able to get your business license, everything like that online. We've done it with taxes, with other kinds of things, and we're trying to do as much as we can to make it easier for people. And we know that everybody does not want to come down to City Hall and all of those places, particularly after the pandemic. So the pandemic kind of really informed some of the practices that we're doing now. And we're really just trying to expedite those things as best as we can. All the low-hanging fruit, we want to get those things done immediately.
You know, as bad as the pandemic was, Mr. Mayor, it looks like that there are some things that are taking place kind of in the wake of the pandemic that's making it easier to do business and to govern. Is that right, would you say?
Yeah, I think, necessity is the mother of invention. All of the difficulties that took place during this pandemic and is still happening, we began to understand that these things had to be addressed. And some things were being addressed, but not with the same sense of urgency that it's being addressed with now, and not as many people who agree with it, as they do now. State, federal, beginning to agree with some things. Housing was an issue. Now it's become highlighted more. The wealth gap, access to health care has become extremely important, the issue around how do people get access to health care. So everybody's now trying to figure out how to deliver services to community, because that's what happened during COVID. We had to deliver the service because everybody couldn't go to the hospital. So we had to figure out how to do that. And that became a new trend now. And that is where I think healthcare is going to go next 10, 15 years, how to get healthcare more mobile and into living rooms of people's homes.
Mr. Mayor, what does it mean? I know that you endorsed Dupré Kelly for City Council in the West Ward. What does it mean to have him on your team at the City Council going forward these next 4 years?
I didn't hear the last question.
I said, Mr. Mayor, I know you endorsed now Council Member Dupré Kelly for election to the West Ward. What does it mean for your agenda going forward these next 4 years to have him on the council?
Well, I think that Dupré is a conscientious Newarker who, understands the issues and where we are in the city, and is, like he said, put in work and time. There's a lot of people who, everybody wants to get to the top floor. They just want to take the elevator. I think Dupré took the stairs, and he's exactly where he should be based on the work that he's done. I think that he's an ally and it'll be very helpful in trying to get the things accomplished we need accomplished. And it's going to be a great representative for the West Ward. More than anything, I think he loves the city and he loves the community that he grew up in. And that's incredibly important more than anything.
What do you envision the two of you working on legislatively to get done for the city of Newark?
Well, I know he's already working on this legislation around these area boards. Newark used to have that a long time ago. Obviously, we need to talk about, the specificity of it. But I think that, the concept is a good idea, and just really the idea is really just trying to get people engaged in municipal government. A lot of people talk about this and talk about that, but they're just not engaged. We expect people to vote, and they're not engaged in government beforehand. And we need to make sure that happens and make sure they're part of some of the decision-making that's taking place in the city. And I know things are happening so fast all the time. And, we can't forget that these are people's lives we're talking about, and people need to be engaged. I think he's interested in doing that and making sure that the development that's happening throughout the city and downtown begins to make its way into the West Ward in a very profound way.
And Dupré, is that what you were talking about earlier before the mayor came on, and you just got off the phone meeting with the 37 community leaders you were talking about, getting people engaged?
Yeah, so I had my first district meeting with all of the district leaders in the West Ward today, introducing myself as the councilman to those that voted for me and to those that didn't vote for me, letting them know that I am everybody's councilman now. And if they truly love the ward and truly love the city, that they will unify with us and share their ideas and share their concerns and share the information that we need to go ahead and get these tools to abate some of their issues and their concerns and get things to where it needs to be. And in my plan during campaigning, we talked about revitalization, but not just revitalization with brick and mortar, but revitalizing the mindset of the individuals. And I told them tonight too that it's going to take them. You know, some of the district leaders are not being responsible as well. So we have to hold them accountable, because I'm sure they're going to hold me accountable. So if everybody truly loves this city, then it has to be an action word. It can't just be talk. It has to be action attached to it.
Mr. Mayor, I also wanted to talk to you about some of the reorganization that you've done in this third term, as you promoted some of the people and you've changed department heads and so forth. And the one in particular I'd like to talk about is the Public Safety Director, Brian O'Hara, now being promoted to Deputy Mayor. Why did you make that move, sir?
Well, I think some of the work that he's been doing needs to be elevated to that level. We need to codify some of the things around police and community. We're in difficult times. When the trend was about when people were saying defund and all this other kind of stuff because of George Floyd, I mean, the wave turned in one direction. Now the wave is going back because of the rise in violence and crime across the country. And Newark has had its share of it. And, you know, people are, you know, pushing back against what I think is a incredible model that we developed here in the city. I think that stuff needs to be codified. And I think Brian is Deputy Mayor O'Hara is the right person to do that. Put together the playbook, for example, to best practices and begin to push this thing in a way that is systemic, not just in Newark, but that people can understand and feel it all over the country and begin to get more money for it. And because I think most of those things are going to getting ready to start drying up, and all the other issues around this violence that's happening around the country. And we need to make sure that we have our eyes on the prize here in Newark. And I think that he's the best person to help us do that. Besides, we're trying to raise dollars to expand the police force in the downtown area because we have a whole neighborhood that's developing downtown. And we're trying to do the same thing around the housing authority and all of those things. So policing in Newark is going to be a lot different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, than it was last year. So we're working to make sure that we're able to deal with that when the time comes.
And O'Hara now is the deputy mayor, one of the deputy mayors. And will he be like traveling across the country, talking to different people, going to DC and so forth?
He will be. He has done that already. He started it as when he was the regular public safety director, and he did it immediately as soon as he got into office. He was at the White House representing us, you know, and more importantly, just really pulling together here in Newark what the system is going to be here, and codifying it and putting rules and procedures, a plan book together, how police is going to work with Office of Violence Prevention, how our social workers will be dispatched, all of those things that people think are simple, but they're not. You know, we've been stumbling over those things for the last 2 or 3 years. We put it together, but it needs to be solidified and put into a system. And he's going to do that for us and expand the work that we're doing throughout the city.
In your view, Mr. Mayor, could someone who didn't have the experience of a Brian O'Hara, the kind of policing and public safety experience, could that person do the same kind of job you expect of O'Hara?
No, because I think the sentimentality is more important than anything. I think he not only knows how to do it, but he believes it. Everybody doesn't believe it. Like it's hard to find police officers that actually believe what we're saying. You know, it's still difficult. Even here, people still don't believe, whether they're residents or police officers, believe that our Office of Violence Prevention or alternative strategies policing have any real effect on the reduction of crime. And it does. The kind of trauma-based and trauma-informed care, it was easier for us to make these things happen in an environment around George Floyd and all of those things. But that's not going to be forever. And so we need to be able to make this stuff happen long before we're all out of here. Yep.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, when you mentioned gun violence or you mentioned violence, I'm going to come back to that. But Dupree, I want to get your take on this. The promotion of Brian O'Hara from Public Safety Director to Deputy Mayor in this role that the mayor has outlined for him to you know, as the mayor said, it's one thing to talk about some of these things, one thing to, and you were saying it yourself, one thing to talk about stuff, but you need the action, and action comes in codifying some of these proposals.
Yeah, I think that it's a great elevation. And the reason why I say that is because I dealt with, Director O'Hara, just every day, basically in the West Ward. Anytime I called him, he picked up my calls. But more importantly, he sat down with community leaders with me. He sat down with people who, it's hard to get the guys who are standing on the block, who are standing on the corners, to sit down with any police. And he sat down with those guys and listened to them. And they didn't feel scared. Sometimes they don't even want to talk to the police. And I really appreciated that day. He sat down and he was able to listen to the plans and build with them. And when I had trouble spots in the West Ward, and I'm talking about before I was elected.
Right.
This is just me being in the community. Even during the campaign, he would come and listen to the community in the districts, and he would be there. And that's presence is powerful. I always say that. And he would let his presence be known. He showed that it wasn't just words. It wasn't just a title. He was really out there, and I can really vouch for that. And being presence is important to me, and especially to the West Ward. He showed up.
Mr. Mayor, I want to change the topic here to violence and gun violence in the city of Newark. There were 5 incidents with the use of guns over the weekend, and then just a couple of weeks ago, 9 people shot with someone coming along in the drive-by and spraying a community. What's it like right now in the summer of Newark? And these incidents got some attention.
Oh yeah, I mean, this July has been a pretty rough one. A rough July, rougher than we've had in the last couple of years, that's for sure. By God's grace, we have not, gone higher or surpassed where we were. But it's just been an ugly July, and we need to make sure that it's not like that throughout the year. I went to New York and met with, hosted by Mayor Adams, mayors from all over the country, talked about gun violence and holding some of the gun manufacturers accountable, and creating laws locally. When I listen to some of these guys around the country talk, I'm just happy we're in New Jersey. We have more opportunity to do things here than other people do, and we just don't take advantage of the things that we have the ability to do. So I was glad I was there. We're having a special meeting here, a high-level meeting talking about gun violence here in the city. We had one to talk about the last incidents that took place, just police strategy and community strategy together. But we're having a high-level meeting to begin talking about other things that we have not really dealt with, whether we're talking about courts, young people with guns in the city, all kind of ideas around involving the youth, the students, and kind of campaign against violence, and getting, that's the same thing I'm talking to O'Hara about, and getting the police and Office of OVP and all those folks to work together better in concert with some of the information that they have, because some of this stuff can be disrupted or interrupted before it takes place. And the police have to trust the credible messengers and the folks in the community, all of that. We still have a lot of work to do in that area, and I think if we get those things done, some of these things you won't see. But it's been a hot July. People are outside gathering on those corners. These guys are having individual disputes, they have access to guns, and they're using these guns. And that's what's happening. They have access to high-powered guns. So they may be after one person and they shoot 3 or 4 or 9. And that's exactly what's going on. So these are targeted kind of incidents between individuals who have conflict, who use their trauma to create more trauma in the community.
Mr. Mayor, I want to talk to you about what is Newark's policy on when it comes to marijuana and the use of it, as it's legal now in the state of New Jersey, and the use of marijuana, off-duty officers, off-duty firefighters, off-duty first responders. What's the city's policy if they use it?
Well, we haven't developed an official policy yet. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about it, and we still discussing and trying to figure out what's going to happen at the state level. Honestly, the difficulty is that people are allowed to drink or consume alcohol off duty, and the marijuana is legal, and so it's going to be difficult to tell people they can't do that when they're off duty as well. obviously, marijuana stays in your system longer than alcohol, where you can detect it in your system longer. So, there may be an issue there, but nobody should be high at work, as they should not be drunk at work, right? They can't drink on duty. You can't smoke on duty. So the question is off duty and how much legal ability that we have, to hold people accountable to that. And so we're having those discussions. There are a lot of people who turn it political and having these discussions and saying things because it sounds politically correct and right. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to tell you stuff because it sounds politically correct. At the end of the day, we're still struggling around the issue and trying to find out if it's really the right thing to do, and can we actually hold people accountable if we tell them that they can't smoke marijuana off duty. What can we actually do within the law?
And Dupré, do you have a position on that? We have just about a minute or so left.
I agree with the mayor. Mayor too. No, I'm not one to just say things just because it sounds like the right thing to say. I think that we need to all come together like they're doing and find out what we can do and what we can't do, and then we hold everybody accountable according to the laws.
Mr. Mayor, I also want to talk to you about what does it mean, and quickly here, for the hiring process for Newark. Someone who's not a first responder and they're taking a drug test and there's THC in their system. Would the city still hire that person, or what would happen?
That's also a question, and I think legally we may not be able to do anything, right? Because it's illegal. At this time. Obviously, if you come to an interview or something like that, there are some specific things that we're discussing in our law department around what would be the similarities if somebody was drinking and, because alcohol is legal, and how would we, differentiate between folks who are coming when we think they're impaired or not. Obviously, if you come to an interview or through a process high, that's going to affect your ability to get the job straight away. We know that, whether it's legal or not. But the issue is holding people accountable for it,
Right.
Because it's legal. It's something that we have to go over.
Our guests this evening on Newark Today, the Honorable Mayor of Newark, Baraka, the Honorable Councilman Dupré Kelly. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for listening and watching Newark Today on WBGO. Also want to thank the team here with me tonight. Producer Ang Santos, the call screener Janice Kirkell, show engineer Corey Goldberg, tech David Antoine, and web Jamara Wakefield and Stephen Smith. I'm your host, Michael Hill of Newark Today on WBGO. This is WBGO Newark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.